welcome to the Leaders of Tomorrow, the only show on Indian television right now where you, the MSME, get center stage to voice your opinions, your thoughts, your concerns and get answers from the biggest experts in the industry. Today we're talking all things infrastructure, and who better to have with us than KK Mohanty of Gammon Infrastructure. Thank you very much for speaking with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, and it's our absolute pleasure and privilege to have you when we're talking about the infrastructure space in India. I want to talk first off about the growth of the infrastructure market. Research reports indicating that by 2023, India will overtake even the Japanese market in terms of the growth in the infra space. Your views?
That's a positive signal for the infrastructure sector, but I will like to put a slight dampener into it. If you take the infrastructure at the peak time in 2007 and 8, if the growth happening above that base, then it's a real growth. Otherwise, in last 5-7 years time, the infrastructure was languishing badly in the Indian market.
What's the reason for that, the primary reason?
The primary reason are multiple. The first thing is all the financial health of all the infrastructure company become very challenging. The second thing is many of the cases projects were delayed, and as per the contractual scope, the disputes were not settled. Everything was dragged to the arbitration or to the courts. See, if you see a contractual, most of the infrastructure contracts are with the government, which is like a sovereign contract. So, if the sovereign contracts looks to be not honored, naturally this the confidence in the sector goes down for both for investors and lenders. So, that was the primary reason for which the sector really suffered. And as far as the delays are concerned, that was very obvious. Everybody know that it's land acquisition, the environment clearances, then the forest clearances. Besides, local administration has become very weak. Especially if I am from a PPP space. So, if you look at the PPP space, you have to, the private sector needs to manage a public asset of 100-kilometer road or a power project or a port project which is in the public space. Unless the local administration
becomes
is very difficult if the local administration is not giving the required support. Some rights are given to you through a concession agreement, which is a sovereign agreement. But if that needs to get implemented and you do not get the administration support, then naturally the project suffers, the revenue suffers, the sanctity of future revenues gets affected. Once sanctity of the revenue gets affected, the investors shy away, the lenders dates gets riskier. So, for example, you take the example of suppose a road project. Today, if you see in the peak projects, every place the local politician play to the vote banks or the local sentiments and tell that the toll should be free.
There is no consolidated framework in your mind?
There is no consolidated framework, and the center state relation is also becoming a very critical part. Suppose the concession agreements are center agreements, but the local administration is the state subject. Though there is a state support agreement, that state support agreement is not honored and nobody gets into the commitment, the obligation into the state support agreement.
So, lots of points you've raised, especially on PPP. I want to come back to that, but going back to my original question in terms of the growth, you're saying that because of the low base, the growth is looking good, but it's not really growing as much as it should.
Yes, today if you go to the grassroots level, naturally you do not have that feel good factor what you talk about, or what we talk about Achha Din aa gaya hai. So, if the Achha Din has to come, lot many things has to be done. Basically, more than people have made a hue and cry about the policy paralysis or initiatives or bailout packages, but I, one among those private players, tell government has no obligation to to bail out a private company or give any package, but government is under obligation to honor its contracts and give a solution with the framework of the contract, which is not happening. Today, for example, if you go to a contract with arbitration process, there is a dispute resolution mechanism, there is a reconciliation, there is a export or a ombudsman process. All these processes before the arbitration or court case delivers zero result. Then why those steps are there? The government should apply their mind thing, why these steps are kept if the result out of it is zero.
Let's come back in detail more to what's happening as far as arbitration goes in the infrastructure space. But I just want to go back and ask you, are you willing to stick your neck out and say that by this year we can see the infrastructure space in India picking up?
I will tell you in this way. See, infrastructure is the basic backbone of any economy. unless the infrastructure is created on two counts, both for job creation and for without basic infrastructure no economic growth can happen. So, on both count the infrastructure is the backbone of any economy. So, government has no choice but to kickstart the infrastructure in the economy, so that the economy's GDP growth has comes to the desired level, or the foreign investors and the whatever make in India, whatever you talk about, unless without infrastructure who will come to India to manufacture, who will come to India to do businesses. Today we talk about ease of doing business. In fact, infrastructure also government needs to see what is the ease of doing business. For example, I do not know, we need to face the might be GST still. Yesterday we are discussing, it seems every month a small company like us has to file 50 returns. In a year we have to go up to almost 1000 returns. So, GST was supposed to simplify the whole procedure. But if you today go to every state, you have to register yourself, you have to still file returns. See, you cannot have a disproportionate allocation of your resources, especially what is the manpower resources, just for compliance and maintenance and operation issues. You have to get into productive areas of managing projects, delivering projects, doing construction, operating projects. That should be the major focus. The operational processes and regulatory and compliance network has to have a minimal requirement which will bring in transparency as well as might be ease of doing business. You cannot go on making it more complicated so that people scare away from business.
How do you think that's going to get fixed? Because most industries that we speak to are saying, yes, there's a lot of concern right now on GST and how it will apply to their industries, but they're hopeful that going forward, say into 2018 or the end of 2017, things will really settle down.
I do also expect that, and I am a firm believer that with the digitization and automation of the whole system and online, things will become easier. Even if you have to today, the positive side is even able to file 1000 returns in a year, might be I have to only file it online. So, I do not have to run into different offices to file those. So, these are the positive side, but at the same time you cannot expect a company of our nature size, which is not even mid size might be, to file 1000 returns every year on just on a tax issue. Besides that, there are other issues like SEBI, company affairs, then stock exchanges. If I have a listed company, I have a listed company, there are compliance issues, there are tax issues, income tax issues. I am just talking about one GST,
industry and one regulation.
Sure. So, we need to see that the load of these works, and how do you in a setup like us keep a linkage about all these operational issues? There will be lapses, then you will be held up for that.
So, what's your advice to MSMEs then about how they should prepare for a post GST regime?
You have to outsource the expert services might be. So, that is one of the solution we are thinking, without creating an in-house facility for this. We outsource the people who have a knowledge and the expertise in this. So, that there is a shared service here, so that your allocation of resources and cost is also minimized and kept on check.
Would you think that's the best solution that MSMEs also should be looking at?
I think that they have no other choice, because a MSME, considering from the size what we talk about in a, suppose 50 to 100 crore type, or even 200-300 crore type, they cannot create such a large base to really handle such complexities. And second thing, nobody is also today very clear. You need a lot of reading and going through the fine prints to know what are the exact implication of different clauses, laws, rates and everything, and what is expected. How today as a MD I need to know first what is the obligation of my company towards GST, towards income tax, towards SEBI, towards stock exchange. So, how many things somebody can master it?
So, it's best that they hire an external agency that's able to give them the expertise and at the same time, and the services, and not drive up cost as well. Okay. So, speaking of government action, I want to talk about demonetization. Did you see an impact?
I am one of the great fan of demonetization, to be very honest, because that was taking away a very deep rooted chronic problem in the whole sector, in the society. I will honestly admit, at least for monetization, few 6-7 months, the demand for money has come down on the market, especially both in the systematic area and unsystematic area.
But isn't that adding more pressure?
That's a very might be valid and pinpointed question. But yes, that might be sometimes delayed the decision process. but I think if you have to have a better future, you have to live with it and go ahead with it.
So what's your advice then for MSMEs who've taken a hit out of demonetization?
Sometimes you have to give the government a little strength by having a little spine to stand up to things in the what happens in the market. If everybody is trying to surrender or submit to the whole unethical practices going in, only one prime minister, one government cannot really correct everything. We as corporate players, the society, the citizens, everybody has a responsibility to slightly contribute and collaborate and converge, so that these measures are effective rather than being only critical about it.
Let's take a very quick break at this point, but on the other side, I want to talk about PPP and the role that technology plays in your industry. Welcome back. You're with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, and we're talking infrastructure and how you, the MSME, can participate in the infrastructure space. I'm in conversation with KK Mohanty of Gammon Infrastructure. Thank you very much then for this fascinating conversation, and I want to talk about PPPs. You're one of the front runners when it comes to the PPP space in infrastructure in India right now. Is that a viable option for MSMEs, or would you suggest that, you know, if they really are serious about PPPs in infrastructure, maybe tie up with a larger peer, maybe look for some sort of foreign collaborations?
See, for if you talk about PPP, it's a more of a financial engineering and financial investment, and especially in the infrastructure sector, it's a big ticket activity. So MSME per se, on the basis of their balance sheet size, may not have a very large bandwidth to play around, but they can still play in the small medium scale in the municipality projects or state projects where the project sizes are small, especially between 100 to couple of hundreds crores. But if it goes to 1000 crore, naturally the MSME balance sheet will not support a. But that does not mean that they do not have a role to play with in the PPP sector. When you look at a PPP sector, you look at besides your domestic investment, you look at the overseas investments, overseas players who are funds or infrastructure players in the large global market. So they will not have the expertise in the local market. So when they come into a country like this, they will like to have the support and outsource them for few of the activities like operational of the project, maintenance of the project, or few of the construction work of the project. So there the smaller players will have a much bigger role to tie up with the bigger players either inside the country or outside the country, and then contribute and make a collaboration in a manner that it's a win-win solution for both. For example, a overseas contractor coming to the country, his cost might be 25% higher than the small size contractor who is operating in India, because he has a lot of advantages, he has the local advantages, his sourcing labor cost will be lower. So we do not want to make our infrastructure sector in PPP 25% more inefficient just because a overseas player is coming with money. So that will be a too high a price to pay for. So there has to be a marriage with the local strength and the overseas strength. Overseas strength is the financial power, local strength is the execution and the management power. So once the marriage of these two happens, then naturally the infrastructure industry become more efficient and more productive and more economically attractive.
Okay, fair enough. You were talking about investments, I want to talk about funding. What is the scenario right now as far as bank lending to the infrastructure space?
I must say that as far as PPP is concerned, the bank sector is almost closed today. The doors are closed almost. That is one of the primary reason, in spite of there is a sweet spot today in PPP biddings at least, but the project is still not taking up in a great way because the banks doors are almost closed. Credit uptake in this sector today is extremely poor due to naturally bad financial condition of the infrastructure sector. Banks not willing to open up to this sector further because they have a lot of NPA and facing a lot of problem in this. And thirdly, they have lost the confidence on the sovereign agreements of concession agreement, because that is not being honored. If that they on the basis of a concession agreement they extended loan, if those conditions are not complied with or not honored by the government, naturally the banks will lose confidence to lend to that sector.
Okay, you were talking about some of the skill sets that MSMEs can bring to the table when it comes to infrastructure. One of those I want to talk about is manpower. Does your industry need high skilled manpower, and if yes, what is the situation really when it comes to being able to hire and retain such talent?
See, today, as I always keep saying, by and large infrastructure sector is still an unorganized sector. So, that is one of the insecurity in the sector, and bringing in responsibility, accountability on the table. The second thing is, today in the last 10 to 15 years time, India has required developed required capability and capacity to implement a large number of projects. Today, if you assess what it was in 2007-8 and today your situation, I think we have a surplus capacity from that angle, whether it is manpower or execution power, we have a surplus capacity, even the equipments, we have a surplus capacity. So, unless the level of activities goes up, this capacity created as not fully productively utilized today. But coming to the question of skill sets, innovations, technical expertise, that is always a ever learning process. It just cannot remain static at one level. Every day there are innovations, technology developments, and today the challenge should be to the bigger players, how innovative you are, how you bringing new solutions, how efficient you are, so that they create a competitive differentiation in the market, rather than which is the present situation comes down, how do we manage the environment and survive, or how do we fight crisis. Today the shift, there is a distinct shift from the efficiency, productivity, innovation, technology to how do we manage the environment and manage the crisis to survive. So, that situation has to change if you want to really enrich your manpower strength, focus on innovations, technology, productivity and efficiency of the infrastructure industry.
Okay. So, I noticed that you are involved in 3 areas of infrastructure development, project advisory, operations and maintenance. If you were to pick one of these areas where you think an MSME could sort of flourish in, could have strengths in, what would
surely the project operation, because their cost overheads will be lower, they will be local, they will have the local expertise, they can bring value on the table by reducing the cost, bring in more efficiency and handling the local challenges. So, project operation and maintenance will be distinctly a MSME area which they can add value and they can create a niche market for themselves.
Are you seeing enough companies doing it?
Slowly quite a few people are doing, but for example, couple of projects we have only outsourced them today. In couple of projects where we are operating, we have only outsourced them. So, that process is already on, but yes, it has not still got into a organized sector or not very clearly niche created, and might be as time flows in, people see a value, okay, everybody creates their space and focus on those areas.
Okay. Are input costs right now, raw material costs or costs for concern for your space?
Except the manpower, the rest is not a concern, because fortunately in last 5 years time the commodity cycle in a downward turn. You take the example of especially in the infrastructure sector, steel, cement, diesel and bitumen. These 4 costs were quite low even as far as 6 months back. Now it was showing a little upward trend, but it's still not gone to the level of 2010 and 11. Today one of the costliest item is earth and the morum in making a road project, because state government, even if you take it from a private plot, government is demanding a royalty on that. So, they have made it so stringent. So, that way those costs have gone up. I think government has to somewhere reach a balance between those populistic measures like low and overs and giving freebies to the general public and put higher tax on the infrastructure sector.
Okay. You were talking quite in depth about some of the challenges that are coming in, particularly because of government policy or lack thereof. If there is one thing that you think the government has to change for the infrastructure space to improve, what would that be, or is it more complex than that, that you can't pinpoint just one thing?
There are 2 things I will pinpoint on this. One is especially for the PPP, because I am a PPP player, I am slightly biased towards that. The existing government expertise kit set manpower is not fully equipped to handle PPP projects, because it is more of a financial engineering, financial understanding, long term perspective and taking decision at the right time. The delays are like absolutely like a nagging pain into those projects. So, I don't think today the government setup has the required skill set and expertise to do it. They need to plant more people, might be mixed up from a private sector and try to make a separate cell. Same engineering department cannot handle PPP projects. And second thing, in a PPP project, if somebody is investing in money, why should be made to run in the corridor of the ministry and the NHI for years and days and months together? He is an investor, he has come with money to invest in your public properties. That is the situation today. You invest money and run around everywhere. Today, the whole idea was the people who come with money and investing in infrastructure should be welcome with a red carpet. But today they made to make run around like just a beggar in the market.
Single window clearance and making it.
Those are all just
ease of doing business.
Ease of doing business. So that is one thing we must do. Second thing is there has to be somewhere a performance rather than corruption or the integrity audit. There has to be, before that has to be a performance audit. The government officer needs to be accountable. The land has to be acquired, so much of land has to be acquired, and this is the time frame. What is the performance you have delivered? Why it is not delivered? If a private sector gets extinguished just because they don't perform, then why a government sector, public sector will be there? And if they think that it is not within the government domain to manage those things or deliver this type of performance, it is only policy making and regulation and control is their job, then they should outsource and give this job to some other agency or some other player. So, unless the government system made accountable for deliverables, then it is very difficult to improve anything.
So, as a last question then, what is your outlook for FY18?
Outlook is everything. We are optimists in the infrastructure sector. We feel that infrastructure is the backbone of the country. So, good times are just might be one step away, a good situation, and we all has to collaborate and start contributing rather than being pessimistic to create a better India and creating a infrastructure sector which is of global standard.
Mr. Mohanty, thank you very much for speaking with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow. If you are an MSME and you've loved this show or you have any question about any aspect of your business, do write into us at leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com. You can tweet at me personally, in fact, with your questions at Sunanda_J. You can also reach us using the hashtag LOT or reach us on Facebook on Leaders of Tomorrow on ET Now, or call us on that number you see on your screen. We love hearing from you and we promise to have all your questions answered. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.